So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this first webinar with Dr. Francois Le Doze about relational intelligence. We are really happy to welcome you here. Just to give you some information about CoCreate Humanity for those who don't know us. So you have here the three co-founders of CoCreate Humanity, Christophe Hensch, Sébastien Couturier, and myself, Helen Ross. We created this association in 2019 in Geneva, and we are a humanitarian peer support community. So we are supporting humanitarians who are suffering from trauma, PTSD, burnout, and stress. And we commemorate those who died during the missions, who were kidnapped, imprisoned, or injured. And we are now working with a lot of professionals in mental health and in the psychosocial well-being. So we are really happy tonight to introduce you to this method that Francois Le Doze will share with us. I just would like to remind you that we will have a 1-hour presentation that will be recorded, and it will be available on a website tomorrow or after tomorrow latest. And the second part will not be recorded. And in between, you will have a 10 minutes break, just to have something to drink, etc., etc. And I will leave you during the second part of this webinar. So welcome, everyone. And Francois, it's now your turn, and you can share your screen.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk about my work, and an honor too. I'm honored that I invited to talk about my work. Yes, maybe I can introduce myself a little bit for people, just for you, maybe where I come from. I'm French. I live in Normandy. I'm 60 years old. I've been a neurologist in the teaching hospital for about 30 years. And maybe when I was in my 30s, it was not maybe, it's when I was in my 30s, I had to go through depression. I started the psychotherapy, and it was at the beginning of a path that led me to creating relational intelligence, which is a new modality, a new approach of psychotherapy. I encountered, when I said I was, when I had the opportunity, well, kind of an opportunity to practice psychotherapy for myself as I became depressed in the 30s. And initially, I was very much, well, when I started all this, it was also a time when I was mostly interested in bringing psychotherapy to addressing physical diseases, illnesses. And I tried to find a way to bring the psychotherapy in the field of behavioral medicine. And I couldn't find the way to do it with psychoanalysis or other methods. And I encountered IFS. It was in 2005. And that was a big aha moment. I realized that this model of psychotherapy would be so relevant and applicable to physical illnesses. So I started to practice, to transform into a psychotherapist using this method, and bring into treating migrant people or migrantous people or another kind of illnesses, neurological illnesses. And I wanted to become a trainer in IFS, which I became. It was into the late 2009 or 10. So and gradually I became more and more interested in psychology, psychotherapy, and I had to make a choice maybe 7 years ago, and I left hospital and started a practice in psychotherapy, and also had to rethink about what I was doing as an IFS trainer. Because I was at that time, maybe 10 years ago, for some personal, on the occasion of personal important issues, that I had to realize that I had to fathom more deeper my own psyche, and I realized that there was some limitations of the IFS model that I was not aware of before, and because at that moment I met two important women, Deirdre Fay on one side and Dave Dana on the other side. I realized those two women bringing to me pieces that I was missing with IFS, which were for Deirdre Fay the attachment dimension, and for Dave Dana that was the neurological piece, the neurobiological piece through the polyvagal theory. So I put that all together, IFS, attachment theory, and the neurobiology piece with polyvagal theory. And I came to realize that I could move and address issues that I was not able to address when I was an IFS therapist, and also for myself. And those issues were related to what I would call trauma issues, not trauma, sorry, attachment issues, kind of issues that are it's kind of trauma that is created as a in the very early childhood, and it's not a trauma in terms of like I was exposed to something with a traumatic scene or something, an injury or a stress or a shock later in life. It's about really the ability, the capacity for me as a baby, for each of us to form security inside of me. So this was a piece that I had never really integrated in my practice and for my own life. And as I put all this together, I was able to recognize and to see how, of course, IFS was a very powerful model, but we needed to go deeper, and deeper was in the nervous system, because those issues related to developmental issues, trauma, which is also attachment issues, also called attachment issues, stand in a specific part of the brain, which is what I would call the lower brain, which is an old brain. And this brain is not, to me, so well addressed by the IFS modality. But we had to design other tools in order to address this. So I tried empirically to do that. And what I'm presenting to you now, which is the model I named Relational Intelligence, is I think the fruit of this research. And I think I came to put together pieces in something that is consistent, obviously works, and is able to address trauma in the biggest picture, which means from developmental trauma to post-traumatic stress disorder, which oftentimes are related, basically. So this is what I'm going to present to you today. Maybe some people would like to just let me know if this was clear for you, what I just said. Is it clear for you? Okay, so we'll just
Yes,
make
it
sure.
was.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So I need to check my. So I said I'm a former neurologist. I'm familiar with brain. I'm familiar with neurobiology, and it was easy for me to uh, build something that was based on neuroscience. And I think this is very important because I came to realize that trauma is essentially about brain dysfunction. It's not much about symbolizing or metaphoric or whatever. It's really about a dysfunction of the brain. And I would like to maybe share my screen now. Yeah. Let's start with my presentation. Oh, this is not the first. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to go back. Yeah. So, yes, maybe I will move forward to, yeah. The point is that, yeah, to me, trauma, and this is the result of a lot of work, of research work that has been done on trauma, and I think we can say, as Bessel van der Kolk says, and depicts in his book named "The Body Keeps the Score," that trauma is basically encrypted in the body and especially the brain. So it's a brain disease. It's kind of a brain disease. And what I want to do is really take that fully into account and build a practice which is based on that premise, which is trauma is related to a dysfunction of the brain. And as a dysfunction of the brain, it brings psychological difficulties, and also because the brain is connected to the whole body, a lot of symptoms and disturbances that affects the body entirely, and leads to, as the ACE study that you may know of, well, you may know, brings about diseases in later age. So it's not only trauma; it's is encrypted in the brain and causes brain dysfunction as a relational organ that it is, and also creates is trauma is uh, the 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 blueprint for um, uh, illnesses that organic illnesses, physical illnesses that will occur later in life. And what we want to do with the relational intelligence is really to make an intervention on the brain, because we know now we know now how to map, the way the trauma affects the brain. It's we have all the tools now, and I try to put all this together to make something unifying, and to say, well, let's, guys, trauma is, when I would go back to my, so trauma is basically a matter of dissociation. So dissociation, what is it? So it's the brain, and what happens in the brain, within the brain, that is the basis for the symptoms of trauma, whether psychological or more physical. Those symptoms are related to a neurobiological process, which is named dissociation. So this is very simple. Brain, and within brain, there is this dissociation. And dissociation is something, it's the final um, pathway to everything that happens in life, even in the early childhood or later, as a humanitarian can be exposed to, that put people into a situation of danger without escape, without outcome. And so because of this situation, which is very life-threatening, the body has to, and especially the brain, has to adapt. And we have a way to adapt, which is to bring about, to create dissociation within the brain. I will explain later what it is, what dissociation is about neurobiologically. But basically, dissociation is a way to alter consciousness, to modify consciousness, and this way to modify consciousness is a way to make us survive to situations that basically we cannot survive. That situation that are chronic, that are lasting, and characterized by the fact that as an individual, we are exposed to a danger that we cannot escape. And in order to do that, again, I'll repeat that, we have to dissociate, to alter our consciousness, and to make it feel as normal, but basically it is not. Are you following me? Is it clear enough? This is okay, good. So the purpose of relational intelligence is to treat dissociation in the patient, and also between the patient and the therapist. And this is the relational piece that I was missing in IFS, because IFS is a wonderful model. It's IFS stands for internal family systems. It's Richard Schwartz created this model 30 years ago, and he, maybe I didn't say that, but I'm a former IFS trainer, the first trainer in Europe, yes, in Europe, and the first French-speaking trainer in IFS. So I'm a former IFS lead trainer. And so I know this model very well. I know how powerful it is, how Dick Schwartz was very inspired when he created this model. And basically, this model is about allowing what we call self-regulation within the person. Richard Schwartz discovered, by really listening to her clients, that each of them had something special within, which was, he called the self, which is basically the consciousness, which remains unaltered even after very big trauma, which is altered within as a resource that can be tapped into. And also was able to read the trauma, to read the way we experience trauma within through the language of parts. So it was it was really a big shift, I think, in the history of psychotherapy, that he was able to not so much getting into the problems of people, but more saying, well, you have this problem, but let's go more inside and see what parts of you are involved and establish a relationship between those parts that are involved in the issue or the problems that the person is facing, and trying to regulate that to separate them out from the self, which is not that easy. And once this is done, to establish a relationship between the self and the parts. And this relationship is so powerful in enabling what we call memory reconsolidation. It means to bring back, to heal, or to allow the parts of the brain which are stuck in the past to get new information based on the present and heal, basically, and to reassociate with the other parts in the self itself. So this is, in some words, this model is a very powerful, and it is the way I really came to realize how we can really address the brain, heal the brain by allowing this this internal relation between the self, which is mostly in the present, and the parts which are, because of the trauma, stuck in the past. So, but yeah, to come back to my thread, as I said before, the IFS model is mostly about re-establishing the connection within the client, and the relational part between the therapist and the client is not, well, it's not that it is, how can I say that? I think the shift, in order to understand that very, and to really acknowledge Dick Schwartz for what he did, is that in the past, when he started psychotherapy, he was doing the psychotherapeutic field was based on, you have a problem and we have to fix it, and to find solution to your problem from the outside. And so what he realized is this is not true. We have the resource inside and we have the self. So he started to create this model based on this big shift. Go inside, check with your parts, do this U-turn, go inside and find out where what parts are involved in your problem, and that you have a self, and this self can establish a connection and relationship and heal the parts. This was the big shift. But in doing that, he was probably not realizing, and as he said later, how important is the relationship between the client and the therapist, in order to heal that. It is not only about the deep healing is not only about self-regulation, but it also based on co-regulation. So this is interesting that you have named your program Co-Create Humanity, because what I'm bringing I think, to the IFS model is the co-regulation piece also, that we have to. It's so important to bring co-regulation to self-regulation. Um, for what reason? Because co-regulation and self-regulation are not addressing the same part of the nervous system. And this is what I'm going to go into now. So we have to address, to see that the trauma affects consciousness by establishing dissociation, and this dissociation modifies the the um, the way I picture myself, and the way also I have a representation of what the other is towards me, how the relationship to the other is towards me. So it's really two different worlds that needs to be connected. But in terms of addressing the trauma, it has to be addressed differently, to my opinion. So this is this is why we call it the relation, a polyvagal IFS. It was the way Derek Scott named it when I presented that to my Canadian friends. So I named Bessel van der Kolk. The brain is about, the trauma is about brain, and especially dissociation and modification of the consciousness, alteration of consciousness. We deal with the brain. We want to help the brain reassociate what he was forced to dissociate because of the trauma and the circumstances of the trauma. So This is the more neurobiological piece now that I would like to introduce you to. I'm checking the time. Is it okay, Helen, about the way it goes? Can you see me also? I don't know. As I'm sharing my screen, do you see my face also? Oh, say this is still
Yes.
relational. This is good. I can see your faces, so it's good too. I can see, yeah, not every faces, but most of you. Yes. We are dealing with the brain. You can see my arrow here, and you can see the arrow. Okay. So basically, we are dealing when we treat trauma, and the way we should do it now, based on the big work that Bessel von Oeckert has done. We should really treat the brain and yeah, see the brain as the key organ to trauma healing. And this brain, as you can see, is related to all parts of the body. So trauma affects the whole body through the brain. This is one point, and through the whole body. Yeah, well, let's me think about that. Yeah. So, but in terms of what I would like to what I would like to stress today, especially because I'm talking to people who are interested in humanitarian work. Um, I think it's important to make the difference between those two brains that I would like to well, I wanted to see the brain in two parts because those two parts of the brains are to me relevant in terms of addressing the two big categories of trauma. One big category is, as I said before, the one I was not able to see through IFS for myself was the trauma of attachment. And the other one is, let's say, in a very simple way. So one is attachment trauma, and the other one is post-traumatic stress disorder trauma. So we have these two big groups into which the trauma falls into. Yeah, it falls into. So two big, and in order to really make sense with the brain, I think there are two very. It's a elegant. There's an elegant way to see it. Is to see the brain also as a kind of split in two parts, and I want to see the brain as separate as a lower brain and I said the lower brain and the upper brain, and it's very important to understand this issue of trauma and how important it is to understand the way the brain is wired in order to address trauma properly. So we have two brains to me. There was one which is the most important, is the lower brain because it's the brain that, let's see, the lower brain here, which is the more archaic, which is the brain in charge of security, safety, and also is in charge of running the organs. So it's the autonomic, to make it very simple, it is the autonomic nervous system, to make it very simple, in charge of really dealing with safety and the functioning of the organs. So both the organs and safety are um, managed by this brain, and I will go back to safety later. And the upper brain, which is a more recent brain developed, especially in human primates, the upper brain is a brain that is more associated to social experiences, to social engagement, to learning, to abstract thinking, and yeah, to make it short. So you see, one is already wired as we are born, as we were born, which is the lower brain. It's wired to recognize clues of safety and danger in the surrounding, and Rand is able to manage the life of the organs. And the other, this is the old brain, the archaic brain, the lower brain, and the other, the upper brain, which I call the upper brain, is not, well, is quite virgin, not virgin, but let's make very simple. As opposed to the lower brain, it's virgin. It's a brain that is open to new information. It's not much pre-wired, and it is not much so pre-information, so innate information. It is open to learning new information. And as we look the brain in this way, we realize that there is one brain. The two brains are very important, but one has much more influence on the other, which is the lower brain, because the lower brain is ancient, is archaic, is and the upper brain, which is more recent, has developed on the lower brain. So lower brain as even though it is an automatic brain, quite unconscious brain, has a lot of influence on our psychological construction, the way we bring safety inside, we construct safety inside, and we run our organs. So this is very important thing. Maybe I can look at this. Yeah, this is the upper brain. I could have shown that before. And this is the lower brain, the upper brain and the lower brain. And there is a circulation of information within the brain from bottom up and top down, from top to down. We call it the top-down regulation and the bottom-up regulation. So we have to figure out that those two brains work together. But because of what I said before, that the lower brain is an archaic brain in charge of safety, of survival, the lower brain has the bottom-up regulation is much more influential on the overall functioning than the top-down regulation. This is counterintuitive. This is not easy because we're so conscious. So we are conscious, and as human, we think, we talk, we engage socially. So we could think that with this, and we speak, and we have language, and we can have a very powerful abstract thinking. We learn a lot of things, and we have this kind of a um, intuition that we work with this brain that is so competent, so powerful, but this is not true. We are rooted in this lower brain, and this lower brain has much more important an influence on the global functioning of the brain than the upper brain has. So maybe we can make a stop now and see if you still follow me. Is that clear? Still clear? Okay. So we have a map. This is the map I offer to address the trauma because to make it simple, attachment issues, the trauma that I was talking about, the attachment issues that are related to internal safety are is encrypted in this lower brain for the reason that I said before. And PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that probably you're facing a lot in the humanitarian world, is more about to me encrypted, or yeah, let's say encrypted in the upper brain. So we have two different categories of trauma, and but they are linked. Basically, we cannot make a separation. Of course, when we describe people, it's easy to make a difference, and we say this is the developmental trauma and this is the PTSD, and it makes a real difference in the clinical world. But basically, the brain is one organ, and we have to understand that people who suffer post-traumatic stress disorder may also have issues in their lower brain, that makes them probably much more likely to manifest post-traumatic stress disorder if they're unsafe compared to people who are safe, and probably make more difficult the treatment of trauma if they're unsafe, opposed to people who are safe. Safe meaning I'm safe inside because I had a safe attachment early in life. So is that clear? Can you follow me? Yeah, maybe. Well, I'm just wondering. The format is that I speak first, and there are questions afterwards. Is that correct, Ellen? So okay. So unless people have a blockade, people don't understand, just raise your hand. I can follow you and explain what the piece that you are missing or not understanding. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this lower brain. This lower brain is key to treating trauma. And this is the brain that is so well addressed by co-regulation, by what happens between the clients and the therapist. And this is the way, because it is so important in understanding trauma and treating trauma. This is why I put together tools in order to address this trauma specifically, and by what I call the conscious therapeutic engagement. So this is very special to relational intelligence. I have designed tools to allow this engagement from the therapist to the client, whether physical or cognitive. There are two modalities to this, physical or cognitive, and those two modalities are complementary to each other and allow for those two modalities, or this therapeutic conscious engagement, is allows the lower brain to be addressed, seen, and healed. Quite as opposed to self-regulation, which is a total different world to me. The person as is exposed later in life into traumatic scenes and is not able to cope with this. There's too much information. There's, for some reason, the brain is not able to associate all the pieces of what has happened to the person, and the brain has to dissociate to make it different, to dissociate the different elements of the traumatic scene in different parts of the brain, not allowing the brain to associate that. And it's more like when we go back to that, we have different expression of the trauma. People express symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and it is more likely that the self is able to regulate that, provided that the safety is good. If the safety of the person, the internal safety was not uh, well established through a safe attachment, it's very likely that when a person is manifesting symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, it's much more likely that the person is not able to self-regulate and probably needs a lot of co-regulation, meaning physical engagement from the therapist. And this engagement needs to be safe and conscious, of course, because we'll talk about touching. We'll practice safe touch. We'll practice we'll get closer. We'll bring movement to the therapies. We get close to the client, or we get more distant. We'll play with this physical clues of safety and danger, and so we need to do that very safely. It's not something that we have to that the therapist can just try out and see what happens with it. We need to be very aware of what we do when we do this, but when we do this very consciously, we can really bring a lot of safety within, help the lower brain to recalibrate, we say to reassociate, and then it helps the upper brain to deal with this trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, that is so invalidating and that you are probably so interested in helping people to get out of. I think so. This is probably the point. So,
Francois, sorry
yeah.
for interrupting. I don't know if you can read the chat, but a question was posted. Okay. Regarding the attachment issues. Can it be attachment to physical location and all that are associated to it, as opposed to single person?
Can you say that again? Maybe the beginning of the. I can see regarding that issue. Can it be attachment to physical location? And all that association to physical location, I don't understand what you mean by physical location.
Sorry, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
When I'm hearing attachment to a person or people, but for people who have moved a lot and do have a family unit that they've moved with, are there issues related to or problems, I guess, attachment to place?
Okay, I don't think so. If we look at what happens with people, as long as an individual, especially a small child, is safely attached to the attachment figure, it's the location is not a problem. It's not a key issue. But if the parent of attachment figure, meaning the parent, is unsafe with moving around and being exiled to another place, then it will be a problem for the kid. Does that make sense to you?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, this would be very important to the kid. The key thing is the relationship and the safety that the kid is able to feel through the lower brain of the parents. If the lower brain is well regulated, it won't be much of a problem to move until the parents feel safe and are able to regulate. If they feel unsafe, to regulate and go back to safety. Okay. Thank you. So I'm seeing the time and what I want to say about that. So this is the very big piece. Let's go to this. I said it before earlier in the talk. Talk about brain trauma is related to dysfunction of the brain, and this is, and the dissociation is the neurobiological phenomenon that is happening, and this dissociation is the way that the brain has found to deal with an experience of with the experience of danger without an escape, without a safe outcome. So let's comment a little bit on this inappropriate experience in front of danger. This is key. And this is the bottom line of trauma, whether in the field of attachment or later in life through the PTSD experience. So you need to review what I'm offering. So if we look at what we know about those responses from the lower brain to in front of danger. So we're going to look at that. This is very well known. This is not new, but I'm just bringing this into the understanding of the trauma and working with this all the time. So it's very, very simple. When I feel safe, or an individual feels safe, let's say some green here, there's no danger around. But when a danger, when the individual is exposed to danger, danger is being related to the nature of a person or something that happens, but also that is close to the individual. Because if you see a fire distant from you, you won't be triggered, you won't feel a danger. But if the fire is very close to you, that, or somebody pointing at you a gun, if it's in a meter or 10 kilometers away, it will make a very big difference. So the distance is key to understanding what happens in the brain when we're exposed to danger. And polyvagal therapy is based on this also. So when an individual is exposed to danger, and there is let's say a critical distance between the individual and the danger, there is an automatic response in front of this. This is key. This is very important. This is related to the what I said before about the fact that this lower brain is already wired, is already old. There's an innate information that helps that allows the brain to recognize clues of safety and clues of danger, even if we are not trained for it. If we're not, we don't need to learn it. A baby is able to recognize through the nervous system, and its nervous system, which is already ready for that, recognize safety and danger. So we have an automatic, we call it an automatic, because this is innate, this is automatic. And this automatic response aims at bringing back a distance between the individual and the danger. So oftentimes through movements, but it can be through immobilization. And this I'm sorry, because I'm not sure. Yeah, well, I'll make it very simple. Yeah, let's go back to that. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is the right way. I need to show it to you. So danger comes close, and we have an automatic response to danger. And because we have this the automatic response aims at bringing back distance, we have the distance between danger and the individual is critical and is perceived as related to a safe environment. And we go back, this automatic response stops, and we can go back to safety. So this is key to understanding the whole thing of trauma, this automatic response. But when for some reasons, especially in situations that people, humanitarian people are facing, it is not to escape, because we are so much close to a fight or something that is very dangerous, and we cannot escape, or we are injured and we cannot move. We can be removed from the place. Well, for whatever reason that does not allow this automatic response to reestablish a secure distance, then the body has a way to cope with this, and this is what we call dissociation. Dissociation is a way to stay kind of alive, but we're surviving as we are still chronically stay close to a danger. This danger might be an insecure attachment figure, or this danger can be an hijacker or somebody, or a fight in or war, or whatever it is. It could be, the thing is that we have the same response to an insecure attachment figure, or to a warrior, or a weather, something that happens in the, well, like a storm, or a I don't know my words, I can't remember. How can you say that, Ellen? Can you name it a phénomène climatique? Oh, maybe I'm challenging you. But whatever happens that is dangerous, if you whether we're in the early childhood or later in life, results in activating this system, this automatic nervous system. And if there is no resolution, if there is no possibility to come back physically into a safe place, we have to dissociate and to look like we're normal, but we are not. And basically we have, in the nervous system, we have something that happens, which is what I call, what we all call dissociation. Just to show a little bit on this, let's put that, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, need to go back to that. Yeah, this is the other thing I want to say, where this is related to early childhood or later in life. This is the same result. We have the same result in the brain, which is dissociation. Here, with this guy is not really able to get away from the hijacking. Let's move to dissociation. No. Don't like to go to dissociation. Yeah. So just for you to understand, wouldn't like to be too specific, but just to show that we know what dissociation is based on. I won't go very deep into this because this is very neurobiological, but just to let you understand that this is well described, how the brain, through those networks, is reacting to the danger by activating already wired pathways, whether to mobilize, or to immobilize. When mobilization is not able to bring back a safe distance, then we immobilize in order to look like we are dead. We pretend we're dead in order to fake it and to make the perpetrator think we're dead and not keep attacking us. This is basically the big thing. So safety, moving, and if it doesn't work, if it wills, bringing back safety, immobilization. And this can lead to death. So we have now a very good way.
Francois, sorry, just a question. Is that the same as you're describing here? It's the same as what we know as the flight and fight?
Exactly. This is the same
thing. And then, of course, the immobilization, the freeze in between.
Yeah, exactly. This is the same thing. So this has been described probably in the 60s or 50s, and polyvagal theory is a new way to see it. So now we have polyvagal theory is a very convenient way and very elegant way to work with it. And this is the way I'm using polyvagal theory. Yeah, this is the same thing. Okay. So we'll move a little bit forward and say how what happens with relation, how we can concretely work with people. I came to let's see there. So a little bit on that polyvagal. We have this autonomic nervous system. Just to remind it how this works. This is wired. Well, our ancient brains, the archaic brain, is wired like it happened maybe 8,000 millions of years before we had the immobilization system that was the basis. It was the only way that living beings could escape danger. Then when fish appeared, this is the mobilization system with flight or flee was coming onto the older immobilization system. And more recently, especially with human primates, we have this, what we call the ventral. Here's the dorsal, sympathetic, and ventral. This is the polyvagal reading of what I said before, and we now the ventral, which is more engaged into connection and then abstract thinking, social engagement. So we have those three dimensions, and one is based on the other. And the immobilization system is the most archaic and the most solid way where this is automatic. When we are facing danger, we just automatically leave the social engagement, go to kind of a mobilization, whether internal or external. We're trying to, when we have an increased heart beating, we're trying to move to escape or to fight. And if this doesn't work, we go back automatically to immobilization before death. This is what I've described here with this little thing. We are ventral in safety, and if we're first in danger, we have this sympathetic activity. If it fails, bringing back safety, we go to dorsal state, which is experienced as immobilization. Okay, so I'd like to move forward. Sorry, I hope you don't have nausea, because this could be, no, this is, okay. So just to give you a perspective on what I came up, the result of my research is how do we do with trauma with somebody who is facing a trauma. So basically, as we do in IFS, we go inside and check with what happens inside. What is the body reaction to what is the bodily, not reaction, but the bodily activation as somebody is experiencing troubles. And and I came up with this what I call the GPS, this map. There are 2, 3, 4 quadrants from the more conscious to the less conscious. And the more conscious the client is, the less therapeutic engagement is needed. And the less conscious the client is, or the more dissociated the client is, then the more the therapist has to engage. So it's very important to understand this. Here we have the upper brain operating. The client is experiencing parts related to the symptoms, and so the client is able to self-regulate, and the therapist can do parts work and do the IFS work and help the parts related to trauma relate to the self and heal. But if there is, if the lower brain is engaged for some reason, because the trauma was so intense and there was a lot of activation of the automatic responses, or the person that was exposed to trauma later in life, for example, people who are humanitarian staff, or so some of them are not safe and are coming to this work not being so safe inside. And there is an addition of the two trauma. So when we deal with people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, we can also very quickly come to realize that the lower brain is very much impacted. It was impacted early in life, and even more by the trauma that happened later in life. So we can follow that. And we have a question which is so important, which is, I won't be more specific about that, but I can let you know about that. The question is what happens in your body, and depending on the response, we have a reading of where the dissociation is at the very moment we ask the question. So this question is key, and depending on the answer to this question, we are able to detect if we're dealing with people who are able to self-regulate, or if we are dealing with people which at this point of the session or of the therapy are more dealing with dissociation, standing in the lower brain. And we have a graduation of this. So there's and then, so here, for example, this is the place where people experience parts, and we can do self-regulation. And in quadrant 2, 3, and 4, people experience more states. They cannot differentiate parts within. They just say, I am angry, or I am fearful, or I am just stuck, and I have low energy, I cannot move. And this will be identified as a state and addressed as a dysfunction of the lower brain. And then the model has, I came up with tools that allow the therapist to adjust depending on where the client is, to really find out if, to be clear about what brain needs to be addressed, and depending on that, whether we use co-regulation or self-regulation. And this is very important to understand. And as if we do that, we can really go very deep and allow for deep healing. Yeah, and I think this is very, very important to understand if we want to treat trauma in a very safe way and as deep as it is. So maybe this could be my conclusion. I'm just realizing that I'm not running out of time yet, but on the I've done my time. So what can I say to finish? I think I could be more specific, but this is more this is more about, would be more of an introduction. So I won't be more specific about the tools, but I wanted to really let you see the different steps through which I've been in order to establish what I think is a very good, clear, is a map, a good map, a safe map to navigate the nervous system and to help the brain to reassociate, which is what the brain's eventually wants to experience. The brain wants to associate. The brain is wired to associate, and because of trauma, because of unsafety, because of what happened, it was not allowed to associate, and we can intervene on this. And the therapist who is able to recognize whether the upper brain or the lower brain is more affected is able to treat that very specifically and bring back safety and bring back and allow the brain to associate what needs to be associated. And then the episode is no more traumatic to my understanding and to my experience. So I think I'm done with the key messages that I wanted to get through. I'm curious to know, we're going to stop my sharing. If you have any questions or if you have reaction to this. Oh yeah, natural disaster. This is exactly the expression I was missing to. Yeah, thank you. Who said that?
No, it's me.
Natural disaster. This is what I was trying to.
Thanks a lot,
say.
Francois.
Yeah.
And I really would like to thank you, because just to let you know that Francois just came back for a long trip from Montreal. So, the way back to Europe is not that easy. So I really would like to thank you for the session tonight. And as we said at the beginning, we will have a 10 minutes break.
Yeah.
And the second part will not be recorded. So you will have all the time to talk with Francois, to ask your questions, but I invite you for now to relax a bit for 10 minutes. I'm just going to stop the recording. Here we go.